views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
I've got so many people to thank, and that's all I'm going to do tonight, is to thank everybody who's been involved over the past, I don't know how many months, Erica, 5 months maybe, that we've been working on this to get everybody's schedules together, right? It is not easy when you're dealing with people like Mike Hernandez and Catherine Blades. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. And especially what's been going on with the Latino communities this year. It has not been easy. So first, I want to thank Erica Sanchez. Where are you? Okay. Erica, who is the president of the New York chapter of the HPRA, Hispanic PR Association. I want to thank so much, deep in my heart, Beiling Shah, who came in the first day we said we needed a sponsor. Beiling Shah came and said, we want to sponsor you at Caltech, Cal State, Fullerton. We have a great keynote speaker for you, which turned out to be Sindy. So thank you so much. And thank you for making it possible for her to be here tonight. I want to thank Michael Diamond and Dean Ehrig of NYU for being such a generous lead sponsor for this event and our ongoing sponsorship and partnership over the year. Where is Jim Carney? Well, Jim Carney made it possible for us to be broadcasting live tonight on BronxNet and on demand over Cablevision and Verizon Fios. These people really deserve a round of applause. And to Bob Veritoni, who doesn't know that I'm thanking him tonight in public. Where are you? There he is. Okay, so if you see somebody coming around and invading your personal space to take a picture, that's Bob. And thank you so much for volunteering to photograph tonight. To everybody at the Grady School at the University of Georgia, who I hope is live streaming this event tonight, and all the other sponsors, Kelly Fuller from Talkwalker, Affleck, Catherine Blades, Ketchum, Finn, and Paige for all your generous sponsorship of this event tonight. I want to give a shout out as well to all the PRSSA chapters around the country who are tuning in to live stream. And I know that Cal State at Fullerton is tuning in tonight, which is great because it's the middle of the afternoon for them. And last, but certainly not least, I want to thank our speakers tonight, Catherine Blades, Beiling, Sindy, as well as our moderator, Mike Hernandez. I've already contracted with Mike to moderate again next year, which, and please note it, is September 10th, 2020. You see, we plan ahead. And now, I'd like to introduce you to Catherine Blades from Affleck. Thank you so much, Catherine. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Thank you so much. Well, welcome all of you to our celebration of Hispanic heritage in public relations. It's going to be a wonderful evening with fantastic speakers, a tremendous exchange of thought-provoking ideas, and most importantly, the ability to share and learn from others. I must commend Shelley and Barry Spector for the wisdom, dedication, and constant commitment to showcasing the very best our profession has to offer and reminding us of the rich history of which all of us are a part. Please join me in a round of applause. We have so much to be proud of, and it's such an honor to be here this evening. When I was thinking this afternoon about what I would say, I remembered my grandfather, Hernandez, and he offered me a lot of advice, and mostly it was around keeping my mouth shut. So I think he knew at an early age that I was going to be a problem, and it has apparently proven to be true. But he always told me, if you're upset or offended, particularly by ignorance, hold your tongue. be more understanding than the other guy. And that's very good advice. However, I didn't always follow it. And I want to share with you an example of that got me into a lot of trouble early in my career. I work for a defense company, and that's a very male-dominated field. I was young and the comms guy, so I didn't blend. But I remember working on this very cool advertising campaign for the F-22, and we actually saved the program that time. And it featured photographs of different people, suppliers in different markets, that coincidentally mapped back to the districts on the committees that we needed to have their votes to save. Right, you know where I'm going with this. And then we had the suppliers actually take blown-up pictures of the ads back to the member when they were in their district, and we had local media there to capture it. So very integrated campaign. But I was showing it to the business development guys, and it was all on a wall, and I was doing the wall walk. And one of the guys looked at me and said, "Well, thank you so much. At least there's one picture of an old white guy." Where is the old white guy ERG for me? And again, not holding my tongue, I said, "It's called the Executive Staff Meeting. It convenes every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Check it out." So I got in trouble, one of the many times. But yesterday, on a very relevant anniversary for this country and this city, I was looking at the Washington Post, and there I saw the story of then Lieutenant Heather, call sign Lucky, Penny. She was one of the first F-16 female combat fighter pilots. And she told her story about how she was doing maneuvers at Andrews Air Force Base that morning. And before 9/11, there was no such thing as a hot-cocked F-16 in the United States. Basically, it was fake bullets, or they weren't armed, they weren't ready to go, because then it was the Cold War. So anything that was hot-cocked was somewhere overseas. So she and her commanding officer got up into two F-16s, knowing that they had no bullets, no missiles, and it was their job to take down that plane. And they were fully prepared to go in and do that. Ironically, her father was also a combat pilot, and he flew East Coast routes on United Airlines, and she did not know when she took to the sky if her father was flying the plane that she was going to have to crash her plane into to take down. So yesterday, I saw the article about today Major Heather Lucky Penny, who was the vice president running the F-35 program at that same company where I popped off my mouth 15 years ago. That gets to my heart. So if I could leave you one word of advice today, because everyone asks for advice. And advice is easy to give but hard to take, asked my grandfather. As you're out there every day fighting for your share of voice or your share of market or your share of wallet, make sure you capture your share of heart, because it doesn't matter if you're Latinx, African American, LGBTQ, heart, that is what is going to change the world. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so sorry, I don't know what I'm supposed to do right now, so. Okay, thank you for the rescue.
You just hand it to me, and I'm so excited to be in the company of another woman who can't keep her mouth shut. I'm Bailing Shaw. I'm Dean of the College of Communications at Cal State Fullerton, and we are so pleased to be able to co-sponsor tonight's event. For the employers in the room, I encourage y'all to diversify your employment pipeline by also looking at universities on the West Coast. Cal State Fullerton actually has this fabulous Latino Communications Institute founded in 2013, and we have graduated more than 150 Latino communicators. And Cal State Fullerton as a whole is number 2 in the country for the number of students of Hispanic heritage who get degrees in the communications fields. Now, we all know that degrees are important, but it's not enough to ensure success in the communications career. Also important in this field is building social networks and creating community capital, which I know is one reason that all of us are here today. Building social networks, creating social capital has also been part of the mission of LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, which, as y'all know, is the oldest Hispanic civil rights organization in the country. And there is perhaps no one more reflective of LULAC's mission than its CEO, Ms. Sindy Benavides. Prior to becoming the CEO, Ms. Benavides served as the organization's COO and its national director for civic engagement and community mobilization. Her other past positions in civic and political engagement include serving as the vice president for field and political operations for Voto Latino, as the director of community outreach for the Democratic National Committee, and as the Latino liaison and director of gubernatorial appointments for Virginia Governor Timothy Kaine. Ms. Benavides has also done amazing and important work for numerous other organizations. Her work is a reminder to all of us that public relations is about building relationships with the public, with the people who are affected by the decisions that are made by our organizations and by our organizational leaders. Together, we decide to build relationships in service to our communities and in service to our country. And so I'm proud today to present to you my sister, immigrant American, Miss Sindy Benavides.
Muy buenas noches. ¿Me escuchan? Sí. A special note of gratitude to Dr. Baling Shaw for opening up the space for me to be able to reflect on my observations in just the last year. I also want to uplift the fact that Cal State Fullerton is in the house. They're video streaming. I know they're having a watch party. And especially thank Dr. Inez Gonzalez, who is my sister and doing a lot of good things in the community. And to you, Shelley, thank you so much for your extreme care to making sure that this happened today. I want to honor also individuals in this specific area, people like Donald Padilla, Mike Hernandez, Sergio Ben-Dixon, and Willie Velasquez, who are really legacy and iconic in the work that we do when it comes to public relations. I am so humbled and so honored to be with you today, and I know that the panelists will contribute so much more in this expertise. I am here more to share what LULAC is doing in terms of protecting and defending our Latino community. We're living in dangerous times. Clearly. We're living in times, as evidence of what happened in Gilroy, California, and Denton, Ohio, and El Paso, Texas, where our race, our ethnicity, our language, our skin color, our heritage is being utilized as a weapon to target us indiscriminately. My identity as a Latina makes me a target for individuals who consider that I do not belong in America because I was not born here, or because of my surname, or because of my accent, or because of the way that I look. We're living in a time in America where division and the tactic of fear is utilized to inspire radical white supremacist groups to act without regard to human life. White supremacy is a serious problem in America, and as a country united, we must combat domestic terrorism. Our very future depends on it. We are a nation of immigrants. Yet our history, and I will focus on highlighting our history as it has impacted our Latinx community, is not one which reflects those values. I have to mention our Native American community, as well as the Japanese internment camps that existed in this country decades ago. You see, in the 1930s, Mexican American communities were subject to widespread immigration rates. 500,000 were deported, and we estimate that 60% of them were US citizens. In the 1940s, 250 to 500,000 Latinos served in the American Armed Forces during World War II. However, many war veterans, when they returned, were discriminated and even denied services by our own United States Department of Veteran Affairs cuando llegaron después de pelear en nuestras guerras. And in the 1950s, the United States Immigration and Naturalization Services launched Operation Wetback to remove illegal immigrants from mostly southwestern states. And in the 1960s, we saw the redlining. In the 1970s and 80s, we saw the attacks against campesinos along the border. And in the 1990s, we saw Proposition 187. And in the last year, as I stepped into the role of Chief Executive Officer for LULAC, what I have seen is a continuous amount of wrong policies that will have a ripple effect on our community for decades to come. In the last year, my role has been to create opportunity and moments where our members can hold our government accountable. My role has been to create an environment of inconvenient moments that mandate that our members, individuals who are volunteers, take out time out of their busy lives to advocate, to speak up, to act. And some of the most recent, I can tell you a couple of them. In May, LULAC, for the very first time, brought 125 members from Puerto Rico. And we did this because we wanted to honor the 3,000 plus lives that we lost in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria. 3,000 plus lives. I want you to think about that. When I met with our Puerto Rican members, every single one of them could tell me of one person that they had lost or a friend that they had lost. Every single one of my members. It's an inconvenient truth, but it is our reality for our Puerto Rican community who is treated as second-class citizens. From 2000 to 2016, the number of people housed in private prisons increased 5 times faster than the total prison population. And over a similar time frame, the proportion of people who were detained in private immigration facilities increased by 442%. That is the private immigration system. And this government and these corporations are benefiting from our community. We have to reform our immigration system. And let me say that we do know that we have to make sure that it fits our economic demands, that we have areas of opportunity and growth, and that it's both effective and humane. And LULAC proposes a Marshall Plan. We had an opportunity to sit with Jared Kushner, and believe me, it made the news. We had an opportunity to sit with the Vice President's office, because what we're seeing are the symptoms, not the root causes. As the first Latina to lead LULAC in 90 years, I have to also acknowledge that we have a pay gap in this country that impacts disproportionately women, las mujeres. Latinas make 47% less than a Caucasian woman, and our African American sisters make 39% less. But there is hope. And though we walk through the fire of oppression, the flames will not consume us. Even when our very democracy is under attack from foreign nations and internal political strategists who seek to decrease the access to the polls, we come together and we stand up. In Texas, LULAC was the first organization to sue the Secretary of State for trying to purge 98,000 naturalized eligible voters. We did this by coming together with two other organizations, and we defeated them. Who has heard of Dodge City in this room? In Dodge City, Kansas, where our community has been growing, the local registrar's office decided to take the only polling location outside of the city limits. LULAC paired up with 18-year-old, the power of youth, Alejandro Rango Lopez, and we sued them. Now we have 3 polling locations in Dodge City. We know that more tactics like this are coming as we gear up for 2020, and here is why. And I want you to understand your power. Latinos are 58 million strong, and we are growing. Latinos are the future of America, and I want you to remember this statistic. Every 30 seconds, a Latino in the US turns 18. Every 30 seconds. That's an additional 1 million eligible Latino voters every single year. Know your power. This administration very intentionally tried to include the citizenship question into the census. And even though the courts were on our side, the damage as it relates and it comes to PR has been done. There are thousands of families who today will not answer the census because they distrust the government, but worst of all, they fear this president will use the information to come after them, even when there's security, privacy protections in place. The impact of the census will be felt for decades to come. And I'm going to pause here because what I'm going to say may sound controversial. Currently, there is a PR campaign to demonize Latinos. President Trump waged war against immigrants, Mexicans, and Latinos from day one. He has effectively campaigned to instill fear in the homes of millions of people in this country. And I want to give you one very clear example. When President Trump launched his presidential campaign, he stated, and I'm quoting this directly, "When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people." It is the position of LULAC and mine personally that not only is President Trump himself to blame for his public hate-mongering, but also those in his party who might not agree but remain silent. Silence is an action. Silence is complicity. In the face of hate and continued demonization by some of our country's leaders, or deadly silence, our community's morale and vulnerability is at an all-time low. All of us sitting in this room and online have an obligation, a duty, to speak up and to combat fear-mongering campaigns with truth. LULAC will continue to shine light and reject any communication that hurts our community. Because we're not talking about hurt feelings. We're talking about words that foster a climate that encourage people to physically cause our community harm. El Paso, Pools Nightclub, Tree of Life Synagogue are clear examples that words can and do encourage actions. As so many of you know, misinformation is one issue negatively impacting the Latino community. The Latino community has a public perception problem. A 2012 study on the media stereotypes and public opinion towards Latinos found that out of 900 non-Latinos polled across the nation, over 1/3 of them believe that the majority of Latinos in the US are undocumented. If you're Latino, how many of you are legally here? Can you raise your hand? The truth is that the majority of us are legally here and born in the United States. There is a problem because the framing around the Latino community by media and others with powerful platforms continues to be that Latinos are the other. Not part of this country, not belonging, we are foreign. We're not America. That same study I just mentioned, commissioned by the National Hispanic Media Coalition, found that there was a more negative attitude towards illegal versus undocumented. You know better than I that words matter. LULAC has always defended the First Amendment. This right has allowed the Hispanic community to fight back injustices from our enemies and speak truth to power to our allies. However, as you well know, the Supreme Court has continuously reaffirmed that there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. As they say for relationship status on Facebook, the First Amendment, it's complicated. So where does that leave us as Latino advocates who have an obligation to defend our community from hate and deed and words and actions, while at the same time we're bound by the liberties afforded to all of us by the Constitution? It's not enough to give speeches. We as an organization, as advocates, as Latinos, and as decent and moral human beings, we must take action. And that's what we did in O'Neill, Nebraska. That's what we did in El Paso, Texas. That's what we did in Dodge City. That's what we did in Mississippi. That's what we did in Puerto Rico. We will protect and defend our community. And we will also meet with technology companies to ensure that biases and algorithms do not put Latinos at a disadvantage. And we will also continue to meet with telecom companies because we want our Latino community to be represented in front of the cameras and in the executive board. And we don't believe that we walk alone. We are asking all of you to join us. In the wake of El Paso, we're working with the Anti-Defamation League to create trainings for our communities so we can understand hate crimes because they're highly underreported. And we have also reached out to our African American brothers and sisters to create a national Black and brown agenda. Together, we have to change opinions, behaviors, and attitudes. And as Catherine mentioned, together, we must change what is invoked in our hearts so that we fulfill the promise of this country. You might be asking, how is advocacy and public relations linked? We become greater advocates by building relationships. Similarly, in public relations, one builds and maintains mutual beneficial relationships. What links us is collaboration, communication, and relationships. Each one of us must always think of who is not in the room that must be in the room. And this may hurt some of the egos in the room. We also have to ask ourselves, am I taking up too much space? Am I speaking for others? By understanding that one civil rights violation against one of us is a civil rights violation against all of us. As I conclude, I wanted to share my personal story. And you see, it's in sharing our personal stories and journeys that we shape the future of America. each one of us must be the creators of our own narratives. I'm proud to say that I am the American dream. My mama brought me to the United States when I was 1, undocumented. And she is a pioneer, and she's strong, and she's fierce. She brought us to South Central Los Angeles, where we picked up cans in the streets. And one day on a bus, she heard that there were great public schools in Fairfax County, Virginia. She figured that if she could move from Honduras to Los Angeles, sure enough, she could move from Los Angeles to Fairfax County, Virginia. I will tell you that she did not know that Virginia was across the country. And this changed our lives, because the reality is that the zip code that you live in impacts the access to resources and opportunities that you're exposed to. It was due to the brave pioneering actions of my mother and father that I am here with you today, someone who has worked hard, picking up cans in the streets of Los Angeles, clean houses, and been told multiple times that I could not do it, simply for being Latina, for being an immigrant, and for being a woman. And it is only in America that the daughter of immigrants and an immigrant herself can stand before you as the first Latina to serve as the CEO of LULAC in 90 years. Only in America does this happen. Only in America can I serve as your youngest leader to lead a national legacy organization. And you see, all of us have a story to share, and we must share those stories with all the people that we know. My parents taught me humility, respect and dignity for everyone, hard work, and service to others. And even when the constant message that I receive from politicians is that I'm less American or not American enough, I know that my identity is one of many intersections, and that my uniqueness is what adds to the very fabric of what this country is. Yo soy americana. Gracias.
I'm going to ask our first panel to come up and be seated. Thank you, Sindy, for those inspirational remarks. Many in this room can identify with your family story, the hard work, the bumping up against the challenges of society, and yet coming to the realization that we are all Americans. It's not just a Latino story, it's an American story. With that said, I guess what I'll do very quickly, have each of you give your name and where you work, and then we'll just jump into the questions. So start closest to me. Oscar, go for it.
Oscar
I can hear you.
Oscar Suris, Zeno Group.
Darcy Brito, AFLAC.
Andy Checo, Havas for me Latin. Alberto Canal, Panasonic.
Rosanna Fiske, Wells Fargo.
Now, what I want to do is a little bit different than normally happens at these sessions. Normally at these sessions, we talk at you about diversity. And, you know, it's kind of like talking to the converted. I mean, everybody here is kind of pro-diversity. But what we have here are some really accomplished professionals. So each of you is very accomplished. You've had successful careers in agencies and companies. 3 of you even had early careers in journalism. What has been the difference maker in your careers? And how might that be translated into, I don't know, success or words of advice for future Latinos who want to lead in the public relations profession? Let me start on the end with Rosanna.
Of course. A difference maker for me was embracing a strength that I had growing up. Math has always come really easy for me. Numbers is, I'm a freak with numbers, and anybody who works with me will tell you that. And I have to tell you, it wasn't something that my parents embraced. I come from a very creative family. I have a grandfather who was an artist. My father was a journalist, and everyone in the family thought that, who is this child that does everything with numbers? And so it was not encouraged. And as a matter of fact, I found myself looking for a career that had nothing to do with numbers as a result of that. And so I majored in journalism. And what I quickly found was that by embracing my strength and what was so innate to me, actually made me a more powerful, knowledgeable human being. And I could be freaky with numbers at times, that's true. I remember the oddest things if they have to do with numbers, including how many dimples are in a golf ball.
How many?
336 in a regular size golf ball. But that said, it's, to your point, it's embracing something that is innately you. And it's a part of you, and that it won't go away. So yes, our diversity is definitely a part of who we are, and that is what I call my secret weapon, to what Sindy was saying. But there's other aspects, other dimensions that really make us special and interesting, and so.
Alberto?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor to be here, not just with my fellow panelists, but these speakers are amazing, right? I think a couple of things. One, I would be lying if I said that I wasn't extremely lucky. I've had the good fortune of running into some really, really great people throughout my career. Some of them are here. Bob Veritoni's running around here somewhere. There he is. There's one. So I've had the good fortune of running into some really spectacular people. I view it now as sort of my opportunity or my chance to give it back and try to surround myself with good people, whether that's through hiring or picking up the phone and if somebody wants my help and ask some questions. That's sort of what I do. But in terms of what I think what's helped me throughout my career early on as a reporter was, being Hispanic, being from the community, knowing without having to look for a map where a particular neighborhood was, knowing where some particular groups would hang out. That was my advantage, and I used the hell out of it when I was a young reporter. From that, from that newsroom experience, I gained the experience of really simplifying things and figuring out how to really break things down to the most simple terms so it's a message that resonates, people understand, can walk away from. And the other experience I would say is, I don't want to call it speaking truth to power, but really holding up a mirror for folks and saying, yeah, you may think we're saying this, you may want to say this, you may mean this, but here's what this audience is hearing when you say that, right? And to me anyway, it's been a very helpful thing in my career to be able to use, particularly in corporate America, to really help change the conversation and really help whoever my client is tell a better story when it matters.
Andy?
First of all, Shelley, thank you for including the Hispanic Peer Association in this program. I lead the national organization. For me, it's very similar. I think the power of network and establishing a relationship is really what taken me through my career, so my successes in my career, whatever you might consider success. I remember I was a kid raised in the Bronx, and my first job I got through a mentor that I had at that high school, where I was part of the New York City mentorship program. And he worked at Bernstein's, which is no longer around. But every week on Wednesdays, I used to go to Bernstein's and follow this guy for like 2 hours in his office. So I maintained that relationship through college, and when I came back and I was looking for a job, he just made a phone call and placed me at a marketing firm right here, like 2 blocks away. So that was the first way of me knowing what the power of establishing and maintaining a relationship and cultivating a relationship is. In most of my career, I have had the job because I knew someone there, and I had a relationship with someone there. Aside from that, I think that even though relationships is key, for me, what had really something that I really consider really important in my career is that I see my career as something that I own. And it's not just about the agency where I'm working now, but it's about our industry and being involved in the industry. So I do encourage everyone who's out there to see your job, be on your jobs, and see this as a personal growth opportunity and get out there. That's how I got involved with HPRA and other industry organizations. So I do encourage you guys to broaden your opportunities outside of your immediate work environment.
Hi, again, I'm Darcy. I think for me, what really made a difference in my career was a mentor, and her name is Rosanna. She gave me my first job opportunity when I launched into PR by accident. I didn't study it, didn't even know what it was. And here was I from Boston, relocating to Miami. I had confidence, I had drive, my mom and dad instilled in me. I could be and do anything. So confidence was not an issue, and how I look, the way I speak, the way that I am, was not even a concern. If somebody didn't get me, they were gonna fall in love with me because that was my mission. But what Rosanna provided for me, building blocks to launch my PR career. And that has been so valuable to me personally and professionally. And Catherine Blades, who's my current boss, I've been at Aflac for 12 years, and for about the first 8 years were pretty difficult. I was invisible. I wasn't being recognized for my work. I wasn't allowed to speak my voice, and when I did, I was punished for it. Catherine allowed me to be who I am, to be part of also her vision. And for that, I am immensely thankful for these women. Oops, excuse me. And so many other mentors who also have touched my life. And Rosanna, you know Julio Mendez. These are incredible people who may not know what they're doing, that they're really helping you become a better you, a stronger you. And all I can share with the audience tonight is find out what's important to you. Find out what matters. What's your passion? And don't let anybody tell you different, and do it. I know we all need our jobs to pay our bills. That's important. I'm not saying quit your jobs, but find out what really matters to you, and don't let anyone get in your way.
Oscar?
Thank you. First of all, how many of you here tonight are in the public relations profession and are Hispanic? If you just raise your hands. That's one of the things I find as I'm later in my career versus probably many of you, and I've been in a lot of rooms where I was the only one, the only Latino, the only Hispanic, and to be surrounded by all of you is it's just beautiful, honestly. So I want to applaud that, So I want to thank Shelley and all the speakers tonight, and your speech was so beautiful. I don't know how I kept my eyes dry, because I'm usually the first to cry at a wedding, but it is beautiful, and it has made me reflect, because when I think of difference makers in my career, it's probably three. I'm right with Andy. Number one, the day I woke up and I said, you know what, I'm the architect of my own career. I am the owner of my own career. I'm going to design my way forward. That was a huge difference maker. So, all of you hold that in your possession. The next step you want to take, the next boss you want to work for, the next mentor you want to have. It's within your power more so than sometimes we realize. Two was really embracing the inspiration for my life, which was a decision my parents made when they were 20, and my dad was barely 22, and that was to take me out of Cuba. So we talk about our own stories, right? So I was a baby, I was 9 months old, I had nothing to do with that situation, but my God, how it has changed my life. And that has been the inspiration for, me always challenging myself, have I gone far enough? Have I taken advantage of all the gifts that being a U.S. citizen has given this immigrant? because so often, and I've said this to many people that I've mentored, is be careful about the ceiling you construct over your head. That you construct. Because very often we'll say it's that boss or it's that whatever, but we don't look at ourselves and say, oh, maybe it's the assumptions I have about me that are keeping me where I'm at. And then I would say number 3 is embracing change. And I think this is really important given the times we're living in, where everybody here is probably doing a PR campaign involving artificial intelligence or automation or whatever. There's lots of buzzwords in the marketplace today, and they all possess the potential for just obliterating career paths and creating new jobs and also destroying many. And do not fear change. It's scary, but you got to have a different relationship with it. And I think if you embrace it and recognize it for the catalyst it can be, you can also leverage it for your own personal growth and your own definition of success, whatever it is you're pursuing. So I think those have been the big 3 difference makers.
Sindy invoked a number of names at the front of her talk. Several of those names are actually the images on your program for this evening. And 2 of them I knew very closely in terms of Sergio, in terms of Willie. And what is interesting about that, and what's interesting about this day and time, given a lot of the issues that you touched, is that virtually everybody on that cover might have had a public relations career, but almost all of them were also engaged in community. Several of them, like Sergio and like Willie, were heavily engaged in politics. And so what I want to ask this group of professionals, is what community or social activity would you personally like to see Latino public relations pros engaged in? And I'll go the other direction.
All right, so I'll go first. 2 things. One, our network. I mean, I know that, we can be a real force for change if we help each other. I mean, I met someone here tonight, an NYU student who's a volunteer for the PR. I'm in a position to give her a business card, and I did. And you know what? Who knows? I mean, we're going to stay in touch. We should be doing that for each other. Because remember that ERG that Catherine described earlier, the white ERG? They do that very well. And we don't do that enough for ourselves. So I think that's number 1. And number 2, I think immigration absolutely is. Being an immigrant should not be a controversial thing in this country. That's a sad state of affairs. And I think we all have to challenge ourselves to find our own voice on that issue. And many of us have the opportunity to be in very privileged rooms because of the kind of work that we do. And we need to bring that perspective to the table. And so I think those are the 2 I would call out.
Darcy?
I echo also Oscar's thoughts. I think we all have a responsibility to help those, not coming just behind us, just to help those find their voice. And I know it sounds overwhelming when you hear big topics like immigration or even the state of our country, how divided our country is. Like, what can you do about it? How can I even make change? You need to find out what that is that's important to you, and there are organizations like LULAC and many others. We cannot do this alone. This is not our fight. This is a human fight. We all need to be in it together. Only together will we rise to the top.
So for me, I would like to think that what I do on a day-to-day for different clients, I directly impact the community. I mainly work for brands, but for brands like TurboTax, it is educating the community about finance. I have another client, Bus Revolution. We had a campaign educating the community on their immigration rights, and we did that in partnership with LULAC. Personally, I think the most important issue is to get Latinos out there and vote, because I think voting affects everything else. I mean, we have the masses, I believe 58 million currently. supposed to be around 70 million after the census. So we definitely have enough people that we can make a difference if we all get out and vote. And by voting, then we impact policy, we would impact immigration, healthcare, education. So the vote is really important for me.
Yeah, I hate to be a boring speaker here, but I can't disagree with the word that you guys said. That is absolutely the right advice. I mean, when I graduated college, one of the first things I did, because I had a little bit of time, I wasn't working like 5 jobs anymore, I was only working 2, was volunteering to teach English and citizenship in the basement of a Lutheran church. I don't do that anymore. I'm sitting here, I'm like, I need to go back to doing a lot more of that and doing maybe just as many check writing, but also putting in my time. I think that's fundamental, right? Helping people find their way, whether it's through English or a citizenship class or whatever the case is, we have to help people find that path forward, right? That's essential to who we are. And Oscar, you remind me something of a former boss of mine that you said, never waste a good crisis. That's good in PR, that's good in your career. It's actually, there are many opportunities, just make sure you capitalize on those.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, and yes, I agree with everything that's been said. I would ask you, when was the last time you taught someone something? And I'm a big believer in education. I give back quite a bit to education. I sit in a couple of boards of education organizations, and I do believe that education is the root for so many things. It's the root for people not going out and voting. It's the root for people not reading, a lot of different things that they should be reading. So that's one aspect that I think is really lacking, and that I hope with all of us doing more towards it, we'll have more people involved in educating others and giving back to others.
Thank you. And thanks to the panel. This is terrific. What we're going to do now, just so you know, you have a chance to interact with people later. Does anybody have a burning question? Let me ask that first. Does anybody have a question they want to ask in the audience? Okay, you'll have plenty of time to talk to them afterwards. We're going to hear a few brief remarks from Dean Ehrig, and then we'll have our second panel. So let's hear it for this panel.
Good evening. I'm the Latino with the German accent. Pero hablo español también. Pero es muy malo mi español. Well, welcome from NYU. I couldn't concur more with what the last panelist said. Education, whether it's from the West Coast or the East Coast, is so important when it comes to solving social problems. So I'm a proud member of the 3rd largest graduate school at NYU, the School of Professional Studies. It's the most diverse school at NYU, so we really cherish diversity and inclusion. And our motto is access and opportunity. Wherever you come from, we really, for 85 years now, want to get you there. The School of Professional Studies educates the leaders in the functional and industry verticals. So whether you want to be the next chief marketing officer or chief HR officer, whether you want to work in real estate or hospitality, you come to us, and through our graduate and our non-credit programs, we really try to help people find a job. And I think that's so important for everyone here, to get a good education. And I mean, if you look globally, there are so many social problems, and as we said before, education is the key to solve a lot of them. And breaking down barriers for people to get a great education. I mean, I come from Europe, education is free. Doesn't work here. And I mean, this is one extreme. Of course, if you want to get a quality product, you should contribute something, but I mean, we have to work on that and then see how we can include more people, get them a great education. I'm super happy to see faculty members here tonight. Mike Diamond, he heads our marketing and PR department. We have 1,300 marketing and PR students, 300 PR students, and it's great because you get the word out, and we have to really empower change agents. And as universities, I think we have this big role to play to educate people to be those change agents. Give them the tools, give them the frameworks to get out there, become leaders of organizations, for-profit or not-for-profit, and then really make it happen. So with that, I'm really grateful to you, to the PR Museum, to host this event. We're a proud partner of yours, and we want to continue this in the future. Thank you to all the speakers. Muchísimas gracias por todo.
Thanks. Let's get the second group of panelists up here. Sarah, Manny, Troy, Nicole. Not that our last panel wasn't youthful, but this group clearly is composed of millennials and a couple of Gen Zs. So what I really want them to help us with is to share with the fact that, I mean, when I came along, let me tell my own little story real quick as people sort of get ready for this next section. But literally, when I got my first job working in politics, and when I got my first job working in public relations, there was nobody else who had a Z at the end of their name. There were very few people that had vowels, and they were Italian. And so as a consequence, it's refreshing to see the number of young people in our agencies, in our companies, that aren't just there, but are representing us very, very well, and are truly the next generation of public relations professionals. So what I want to do is ask each one of you, what I want to know is, how is being Latina or being Latino a positive in today's public relations environment? And I'll start on the other end and give your name and where you work before you get into your answer.
Hi everyone, I'm Chantal Gomez. I work at Finn Partners. I guess an advantage of being Latina now is I like to think of myself as leading a double life. I'm American at home, I'm Latina in the world. And so when I go to work, I'm able to give two perspectives. I'm able to give the American perspective that everyone at home thinks I have. And at work, I'm able to give the Latina perspective that I grew up with. You know, my parents are immigrants, I'm first gen. And so I grew up in this little community of Dominicans and just knew that for a very long time. And so I was thrown into the world. And so I'm able to just give that small perspective of the people that I know.
Awesome. So my name is Nicole Cueto. I am the head of PR and communications for Revolut, a new digital bank. As a Latina, I feel, well, let's just start off. As a PR professional, we have a platform where we are able to shape narratives that can potentially define history. But as a Latina, I'm entrusted with the opportunity to share my perspective colored by my experience, my interactions with others, and then communicate that in a way that shows the world who Latinas and Latinos are.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manny Cedeno. Everyone knows me as Manny. I think, and I'm with Finn Partners as well. I think Chantal hit it like right on, you hit the nail on the head with that. Mainly because, at home we're seen as Americans, and in the professional world we're seen as Latinos. But we do bring that dual prong perspective, where I think that's really an advantage that we bring to the table as Latinos in the PR industry. We're storytellers, we're communicators, and not only can we communicate from an American perspective, but can also bring that kind of Latin, that South American, that Caribbean kind of perspective too. So I think that's really kind of one of the strong points that we bring to the table as Latin communicators, as Hispanic communicators, for sure.
Sara Banda, and I'm with United Technologies' media team. And I would say that I'm a proud Latina and proud Mexicana as well. I would say that one of the things being Latina has helped me. I'll give you an example. So I also served in the Air Force at one point, and being representing the U.S. around the world, or even representing my company around the world, I'm much more able to basically understand other cultures much more quickly, I feel. And so every time that I have that opportunity to just represent, it's a wonderful thing, because I think our upbringing sometimes teaches us to embrace other cultures, whether they're Latino or not. And I think that helps us on the business side as well when we're representing our organizations or our country.
Hi, I'm Bernice Gonzalez, and I work at Havas and also part of the HPRA New York board. As a Latina, well, I think I agree with all of you and what you've said. I think we are more empathic, and we are more welcoming to change and diversity. As a Latina, it landed me my first job 7 years ago because it was for a Hispanic position. But as I continue to grow in the company, now I'm helping also like the general market and the Hispanic market. And I really would like to see more diversity. So I feel like we have the power to welcome other people, to understand their backgrounds, because at a moment in our lives, maybe we encounter some difficult situations when someone pointed at us because of our accent or because of the way that we looked. And that's not a nice feeling. You don't feel nice when someone is judging you by your looks. So I think that that's our advantage, that we are more welcoming. And
Hi, everyone. My name is Troy Blackwell. I'm a press advance lead on Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. I agree with everyone here and what they mentioned, but I want to ask a question to the audience that will kind of spare on this, is how many of you guys felt you had to work twice or 3 times as hard based on how you identify, based on your identity? Right? So for me, I would say that the strength or the advantage in being Latinx is grit. And to me, the grit is the burden that we carry from our immediate families, our parents, our grandparents, anyone in our immediate family. We know the struggles of why they came to this country. We know the struggles of having to work twice or 3 times as hard. There's been plenty of meetings or rooms I've been in and I said to myself, wow, this person is so much smarter than me, but you're not gonna work harder than me, right? And so I feel like when you carry that, whether it's because you are Latino, whether it's because you are of another ethnic minority, because you are a woman or LGBTQ, you carry that grit, that fire, and that's something that cannot be bought.
Now, great job. My next question goes to something about 5-6 years ago. I felt a change, at least in advertising in America, where at that juncture, up to that point, a lot of advertising that tried to reach our community was very narrow-scoped. It didn't tend to embrace this sense that we really are a part of a new American mainstream economy. And, but the first ad that really kind of caught my eye was the Buick ad that came out, I think it was in 2013, where all of a sudden it was staged such that, you know, these people are looking through the window at their neighbors who are driving up in this new Buick, and they're all concerned about keeping up with the Garcias. And so what I'm really keen on is, so all of you have kind of grown up in the digital age. You're digital natives. On top of it, you grew up at a time where there was like incredible growth in the Latino population in the United States. So what I'm really keen to try and understand is, as you look at what you see in the marketplace, what you see colleagues doing, what you see other companies doing, you know, who's doing the best job? Who's, you know, what companies are out there really connecting with this new mainstream economy? And Troy, I'll start with you, and we'll work our way back the other direction.
Yes. When I'm thinking about companies that are engaging the Latino community, whether it's on the technological side, I'm always thinking from a mindset of social impact or community service. So for me, because my family is from Puerto Rico, my family was affected by Hurricane Maria. We did have to take in relatives. My family's from Carolina, which is about 30, 45 minutes away from San Juan, the capital. And immediately when I think of companies, I'm thinking not about companies that put something in Spanish, right? But I'm thinking do you hire Latinos? Do you have Latinos in leadership? And also, how are you giving back? So for example, I would say next month in October, Hispanicize is an event coming up. What tech companies are sponsoring Hispanicize? Because that's giving back to us. And for me, the company that comes to mind is Google. And the reason I say Google is because after Hurricane Maria ravaged Puerto Rico, our schools were already closing on the island because of the huge amount of debt that the government owes to the IRS. But Google really stepped in and they raised money for the island of Puerto Rico to specifically help with small businesses. The money that they raised went to the Hispanic Federation for the work that they were doing. They split funds with something called Mercy Corps, which was down on the island also helping with small businesses, particularly those who are in produce and agriculture. I also think about Tesla, who decided to come in and step in with the electrical grid when we know that people, hospitals had no electricity for those who were on ventilators and needed electricity or else they would die. 3,000 people died. And the two companies that I think that stepped in and helped more people from dying are Google and Tesla. And I carry that.
I really like Spotify. I feel like they are really understanding the Hispanic community, and they understand that within the Latino community, we are not all the same. And so they even have like different, whether you like salsa, you like reggaeton, or you're like more like into alternative, they have different playlists for that different type of listener. And that's one of the companies that I really like, and the other one is Target. I think that what they do, they are I agree with a lot of what you said, and I wish more companies would invest in Hispanic market, and I feel like they are continuously investing and trying to connect with us, and they do it by Medium, placing their ads, engaging influencers. So I think it's a fantastic thing that what they are doing.
Sarah?
Sure. So this is a question that I think is very important, because I think it goes back to how do we define Latinos? How do we define Hispanics? And because there are a number of companies, in my opinion, that are doing a really good job of targeting various audiences in the Hispanic community and communicating their message and engaging with those audiences. You have Walmart, you have the telecom companies, and I'll share with you one of the commercials that I could think of right now that resonated with me, and it's unique, but it's because it goes back to storytelling. I mean, one of the things that we do is we need to be great storytellers, regardless of what the topic is. We need to do that. And I saw a commercial the other day that it talked about a distinguished veteran, and how he was he's a veteran, and but he wasn't born in this country, and yet he fought for this country, and he's a citizen now. And it was an ad that Modelo put together, and it's a series of commercials that is about storytelling, not so much about the product per se. And I thought that there's a series of commercials like that they have, and I found it unique because it's a beer organization that's doing this. But again, they're doing such a great job with the storytelling, and they're just one of many companies that are targeting a certain side of the Hispanic community. And to me, that's, I resonate. I could relate to that commercial. So I guess it goes back to how do we define that Latino audience?
I would have to say that two companies that come to mind off the bat are probably AT&T and State Farm. One of the things that they've done really well is that they've been able to take
Just for
their
the record, I was part of the State Farm.
Mere coincidence. One of the things they've done really well is that they've taken their U.S. Hispanic campaigns, and they're really, I want to say mirror, or they're really reflective of their general market campaigns. And that's not to say, back to Troy's point, it's not about just taking a message, saying it in Spanish, and then that's it. No, they're actually, the campaigns they put together are still culturally relevant to the U.S. Hispanic market. And I think that overlap really goes to show more of what we have in common than our differences. And I think that's really important as a country as a whole. So I think that's really cool with what those two companies are doing as far as State Farm and AT&T. And then another, I guess, campaign that kind of just comes to mind automatically is something that the minor league baseball, or the minor league MLB, did throughout this past year was that they basically did almost like a fan engagement program. And it's called La Copa de la Diversión, it's the Fun Cup. And as opposed to just kind of that one-off approach where it's like, oh, Hispanic Heritage Month or Hispanic Heritage Day, or whatever the case may be, they actually extended this throughout the entire season and throughout the 33 teams. So just beyond just the, maybe changing the logo to, to reflect a Spanish language name of the team or whatnot, it went, beyond that and really kind of was tailored to each individual community. So it wasn't just a kind of one size fits all, but they really kind of focused in and honed in on their, different Hispanic communities throughout the United States. That's 33 teams, if I'm not mistaken. So while we're one Hispanic and Latin community, I think there's still kind of little divides among all of us that can still embrace as well.
So for me, a couple of companies that stick out are definitely Target, Toyota, and Diageo. I think these companies basically take this approach of celebrating differences while at the same time making the Latino community feel like they belong. I think it's really important to identify their cultural nuances, but also not isolate them. You want to make people feel, especially in this day and age with the entire immigration situation going on, like they're part of this community. And so I think these companies do that really well, not by checking those boxes that say, oh, we're doing these campaigns that target Hispanics, but really making them integrated into our society, into our communities, into our culture as Americans overall.
For me, it's always Nike. I always go with Nike, not only because, everyone knows they're so big on social impact right now, but last winter, fall, they created the special sneakers for residents of the Heights. And I just thought that was so amazing for them to thank this small community that they know just purchases their sneakers all the time. And it was such a special way to just thank them. It was the De Lo Mio sneakers, and they personalized them. They put dominoes in the packaging with the sneakers. They had a Dominican artist create the sneakers with them, and they sent influencers these personalized boxes with the sneakers, the dominoes, and just a little bit of history of Washington Heights. And I just thought it was just great. But to Troy's point, I wish companies would do more beyond that, beyond the marketing, beyond just, if you're going to sell the special sneakers, do more. Give back to the community, help local businesses, and don't just stop there.
Questions for this group? Okay, here we go. We have a good question right there.
Hi, my name is Genesis. I go to the City College of New York. So my question is, what got you guys into PR and how did you start out? What was your first step? Or what's your advice in taking the first step into being part of this field?
I'll start. So mine was not a traditional path. I went to school for journalism and communications, but then I went to law school, graduated, got licensed as an attorney in 2 states, but then realized that I didn't want to be a lawyer. I wanted to do something different and actually fell into this by chance. And the opportunity for me as I networked my way through it was just incredible. And I decided to stick with it. I ended up getting into government. I was a director of communications for a member of Congress, which led me here to New York to work for the current mayor and so on and so forth. And I guess my best advice to you is to know that to be a PR professional means so many things. To be a PR professional means to be a storyteller. Every organization needs somebody to tell their story, whether they're a nonprofit, whether they're corporate, whatever they are. Just do something that you feel comfortable telling the story. I've been in situations where I've actually left my job because I didn't feel like I was communicating what I truly felt. And so I think going along with that is really important to be able to be authentic to the story that you're communicating.
Anyone else?
I would say be vocal. I think that sometimes that has gotten me some problems, but for most of it, I think it's a good thing to express yourself, your ideas. Sometimes it's hard, especially when you're just starting your career. But the fact that you are talking about an idea or your point of view, it is going to resonate and it's going to show that you care. And in this business, you have to show that you care.
Yeah, and I would add to that, if you have some discrete, important knowledge to convey, or you have an insight to share that maybe no one else has, you really have some real coin in this business, and you should use that. You should raise your voice. Yeah.
Hi. I'm a member of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, and recently our president, Hugo Balta, denounced and gave back $16,000 to Fox News because of their language surrounding immigrants. I guess my question regarding this is, what do you think of that? And a couple other follow-ups, which would be, have you ever faced an ethical issue like that in terms of your role as a public relations person and how you handled it, as well as have any of your companies considered donating to the National Association of Hispanic Journalists?
No plug.
I can start. I think your president did the right thing, in my personal opinion. And the reason is because even though he could have just accepted the money, but I think the money is about the principle. It's about the fact you can't just throw money at a situation and think that fixes the language that you've used, especially when language has caused physical harm to our communities. So I think he did the right thing. In terms of those ethical decisions, I'm no longer at a PR company since I'm in the public affairs space, but that comes up all the time with fundraising and donations about who you accept donations from. That's a big thing right now in the 2020 election where people are discussing no corporate PAC money, or depending if you're doing local elections, how much of that money is coming from real estate. So those kind of things come up all the time, and I think the bigger question is you have to ask yourself, what is the harm in taking this money, and what does this end to our the general population, whether it's a membership-driven organization or, in my case, constituents? What is the message that people would perceive if accepting that money?
There's also, I think, the challenge that all of you are either Gen Z or millennials and are noted for embracing companies with purpose. And so we have seen instances where employees have raised a ruckus with their employer when either senior management or decisions have been made that the employee base is otherwise opposed to. I mean, we saw that with Wayfair. We saw that with Google. We also saw it with two agencies where actually Edelman decided to let go of a client that they had won because there was concern about the fact that this organization had something to do with the detention centers on the border. But I would open it up to all of you in terms of, as you think about working for an agency or working for a company, does it enter your mind as to that you have to raise a voice associated with a social stance or a political issue that a company might take that you work for?
I would say 100%, and if I could add more to that, I would. It's our responsibilities as the communicators, as the storytellers, as the brand developers, and the narrative builders to do that. We are entrusted with this voice, and it's absolutely our responsibility to fight that.
Sorry. I work in the social impact space, Ashley F. and Partners, and that's actually what we do every day, try to tell our clients, they don't like to be political, they don't like to cause a stir, and we tell them, no, you have to. And in this day and age, you have to cause a stir, you have to be political, or at least give off a sense of what you believe, because instead of influencers now, we use influencers, but they're most social activists. We a lot of our clients like to use activists in the environmental space and the education space, just because they target an audience that they're looking for exactly. If you just target any influencer just because of the follower or count, you're not really targeting the people who you want. You're not targeting the people who actually care about sustainability or about, closing the digital divide. But by targeting these activists, you're able to use them at events. We're able to do certain things. Like right now, in a few weeks, we have a few clients actually at the UNGA Summit here in New York City, and we're trying to do a lot of stuff with sustainability. And so that's what we try to push for in our practice.
I mean, yeah, I would obviously agree with 100% with what everyone's saying on this panel. I think I would keep it quick and easy. And I mean, as the quote goes, stand for something or fall for anything. And I think in today's society, we need to stand for something and, take your stance. And if that's what you believe in, then, stand forthright and push forward. So once again, stand for something or fall for anything, for sure.
Other questions? One in the back and one in the front here.
Hi. My question is, as we move into a new decade, which is crazy that 10 years have passed already, what are the things that you kind of want to leave behind in this decade, and what are the things that you want to bring in to push forward our cause and our situations?
If I have to be honest, we can leave behind press releases. I feel like they do not work and everyone loves them, but they're not really doing anything. But we need to push our clients to be on social more. That's where everyone is. Everyone's on social media. It doesn't matter which platform it is. But just to put their voice there, a blog post or just an Instagram post, every 2 days or something will really make a difference in your followers and who cares about your brand.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Go.
I would say if there was one thing that we can embrace more, I think, especially from a PR perspective, we could definitely let go of press releases, I guess. But I mean, I guess those will stand for a while now, just because of the other acts they do. You know what I'm saying? But what I think that brands and companies could do more of from a PR perspective is really just content creation, and it kind of goes back to your social media, comment. Is that ultimately, especially as we talk about Gen Z and, as, we're going into a new, decade, where are people getting their news from? I was in a meeting the other day and they're like, oh, what are kids 11 to 17 nowadays or years old now? What are they reading nowadays? And it was like, what are they reading? And the fact of the matter is that they're getting their content, or they're getting all this from social, from other peers themselves that are either sharing certain articles or, just looking into other content that's being created. So if we're basically speaking to media and kind of communicating that way in storytelling, why don't we just kind of get behind the wheel and actually create that content, as opposed to kind of convincing and telling our story so that someone else can tell it to our audience. So
I would say to do our part to be more inclusive and diverse. Like, honestly, we were just talking a couple of minutes ago with you, Erica, about how 10 years ago the conversation started to be more inclusive and more diverse. And here we are 10 years later, and the change has been minimal. And when I sit on meetings sometimes, whether it's with another agency or within our companies, I don't see diversity. I need to see a range of colors included into it, because I feel like if you are speaking to America, it's multicultural, multiracial. And in order to have a good campaign, in order to deliver your message correctly, you need to start with the people that you're going to speak to. So if you and your company are not doing your part to hiring, to speak to your CEO about let's bring new people, let's bring new backgrounds, then it's in us too. I think that we have to start with change. So
I just want to add one thing as well, is also I'm a little old school as well. And I think we can't, I think social media is amazing. I love it. But at the same time, we can't lose sight of the importance of that one-on-one communication with however you define a reporter, an influencer, et cetera. The face-to-face communication is still very important. So I just wanted to highlight that.
No, and I think that from talking with clients, it's so true. I mean, that there's a certain element of authenticity that you gain in that face-to-face communication that you don't gain in other media. Yeah.
podcast.
Podcast, yes, yes,
Podcast.
yes. And tell them to listen to the Crux. No, that's a podcast
I was
I
just
do.
going to say, I wish I would see that more in strategy. I feel like podcasts are underutilized. I feel like they have a huge following. Because even just hearing the word decade, I'm thinking, okay, my younger sister just started high school, and to think like 10 years from now, she'll be out of college, right? So, and it just makes me think like podcasts, that's how we're going to reach the next generation.
Yeah, yeah. Jim, I think you have a question right up here front.
Yes, hi, I'm a student from NJCU, New Jersey City University, and my question is, as we keep on telling stories, how is it that we can keep a consistent value for the younger generations to follow? And if you, what way do you guys have so what I'm looking for, to spread that message, I guess, in a way?
I guess authenticity. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you completely believe in that message 100%, either it's your client or yourself. Even like now, we keep talking about influencers. If you're going to pay an influencer to help you out with something, make sure they believe in that cause. Make sure you're just not throwing money at them because they're the hottest thing this week. Just, stay original. Don't do stuff just like getting on the bandwagon, and just do things because you believe that is the message you want to portray.
I think creating a culture from the inside out is something that will leave a much longer lasting impact. So making sure that internally your company, your employees, you as the executive board, whoever it is, really communicate that internally, so then it resonates externally and sticks.
I was just going to mimic that. For me, the first thing that came to mind was authenticity. I think people resonate with real stories. They resonate with real people, regardless what the situation or the topic is. So I think if you're talking about the next generation, I think they like to hear something that's real. So just keep the conversation open, as honest as possible.
Yeah. There's one question in the back, Jim, and I think that'll be our last question. Know that you can talk to everybody in the reception afterwards.
Hi, my name is Sylvia. I'm with Talk Walker, and I have a question for you guys. For you when you were like probably 8 years old. I am Mexican. I just recently moved to the U.S. a year ago, and I have kids, and they're Mexican too. So, what piece of advice would you give them, like your little kid inside of you and the adult that you are right now? What piece of advice would you give to like 2 little kids, Mexican heritage living in the U.S. today?
Great question.
Well, Mexican. So I grew up in Texas, in a small farming community in Central Texas. And I'm just thinking back, I would say that be yourself. Be yourself. And don't be afraid to speak up. Regardless if you're the only kid in the room and the room is made up of adults. I did it all the time. Speak up. Speak up for others. I think that that's something that my parents always told me from a very young age. And I think like many of us, I used to translate. My parents didn't speak a lot of English. And so I was often the person who was called upon to translate for aunts and uncles. And so that's why they always encouraged me to just speak up. Don't be afraid. That was the thing. Never be afraid of a situation. Attack it head on, regardless of what it was.
I think for me, it's don't let yourself be influenced by the outside world. It's really, really hard to try to please everybody and try to be somebody, that you're not sometimes, just to kind of prove yourself to people. But there's a lot of bad in the world, but there's also a lot of good. And surrounding yourself with that good, with positive people, with all of these change makers is what's going to sort of set you on that path for success, both professionally and personally.
And I would add to be proud of who you are and own it. As you can tell, I am immigrant, I have an accent, and look, when I first started my career, And even in college, it was a little bit hard for me because I was like, oh, maybe they are not understanding what I'm saying. But now I embrace it a lot because it's beautiful. And I think that it showcases that I came from another country, that I got educated in this country, and that I work as double as any other human being here. So.
If I could add to that, I would just say, you know, and it's kind of like piggybacking off what you just said, is just embrace who you are, you know? It's cool to be Latino, I think, you know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up and I thought it was like the coolest thing. Some people, I could speak another language, a lot of people didn't, you know? So I would say embrace and learn to be confident. Some people are confident by nature, they could just do whatever and just kind of be that person. However, for others like myself, I mean, you just gotta learn to be confident, and it comes with time and with practice and putting yourself out there and being vulnerable, but at the end of the day, embracing who you are and just, you know, pushing forth and learning to be confident, for sure.
And to add to all of this, I think finding mentors is probably one of the most important things that you can do. Finding those other people that have had challenges that you can learn from is really, really important.
I was just going to say that I think the best thing my parents ever told me was that I deserved it. And I think it's so simple, but even getting a really good grade on a test or, you know, making a sports team, it's not you did a good job, it's you deserved it, you earned it. And I think that always stuck with me, even as an adult, hearing my mom's voice, that I've gotten things because I've earned it and I worked for it. And I think just that small step goes a long way.
Let's hear it for the panel. It seems to me from the two panels, we've learned a lot of key things. One is speak the truth. Two, relationships matter. Network. And when it comes to diversity, as Bernice, you said it so eloquently, you know, you need to be proud and you need to own it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. Once again, I'm Jim Carney from Lehman College from City University of New York. We're so happy to be part of this program. There's a couple of people that I want to thank specifically. I want to thank my students for coming down all the way from the Bronx to be here tonight. Actually, that's what this is all about. It's amazing. It's a small world, too, because Beiling, your former provost is our former president, who is now our current executive chancellor, Luis Cruz. Is just started at CUNY in the Central. So it's a small world, and we have similar agendas. So Lehman is really happy to be part of this. On behalf of BronxNet, Mike Maxnabi, who this has been streamed live. It'll be available on demand later on through BronxNet's website. So I want to thank them for making this available too. The other day, during the summer actually, I was putting together my lesson plan for my Intro to PR class. And I like pulling together different resources. And I went data mining for resources for my class. And I got more than 3 or 4 hits from the Museum of Public Relations. And as a result, a couple of the links that are required, you haven't seen them yet because they haven't made them available, but in the class are directly from the resources of the museum. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge Shelley and the museum for what they did tonight and for what they continue to do. If you don't know about the museum, check out the website. They are a nonprofit organization that relies on contributions for their existence, and they're the only organization of its kind known to man. Okay, that's one of those vagaries that we can say in public relations that they can't fact check. But the fact of the matter is, it is a wonderful organization that needs your support, both individually, which you're doing tonight by being here, but also as Latinx, as one of the white European guys in the room. It is really important that we support the heritage of our craft, and that having been both a practitioner, I worked for Time Warner companies, and now I teach what I did. It is so important to make all of those resources available to you guys and to the next generation. So please support the Museum of Public Relations. Check out the site, use it, and support it. With that, let's eat. Please take advantage of but the most important part of this program is yet to be the mingling and networking, so please take advantage of it.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate that. Thank you.